Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Now, obviously, if you've been watching any of these channels, mine included, for any length of time, you know that we rag on the Walt Disney Company quite a lot. And a lot of it is for good reason. It's not just the fact that they have gotten a hold of and destroyed and completely decimated some of our most beloved IPs. It's not just that they talk down to fans and they try to act like we're the problem when we don't show up to go see their movies or watch their television shows or buy their toys for that matter. And at the end of the day, I think one of the things that really comes down and irritates most people about Disney the most is the absolute hypocrisy and the fact that they are hypocrites through and through. And we can go back through time history not too long ago to go back to exactly when they do this. We saw the shrinking of Finn on the Star Wars posters for the Chinese saucers. We saw what happened with the Little Mermaid poster over there, the IMAX one over in China, where they suspiciously made her look blue and not her natural skin tone, as the beautiful actress that played the lady or played the mermaid was absolutely thereof. And then, of course, we saw the Black Panther stuff happen with T'Challa and his mask being put on, unlike the American poster for IMAX, where his mask was off. Of course, in China, they removed the poster. We've also seen them censor things for the Middle East in order to get into their theaters and stuff like that. So it's been one of those situations for all of the talk Disney says about wanting equality and, equal everything for women and men and trans and gays and bisexuals and all the rest of this stuff, all the virtue signaling they do, all the talking they do, all the time they call us homophobes and hypocrites and they call us bigots and they call us, we just hate women and all this other kind of nonsense. Well, boys and girls, at the end of the day, 2 + 2 still equals 4. And math still is math, and numbers don't lie, because, ladies and gentlemen, we have the latest edition of why Disney is nothing more than a bunch of virtue signaling hypocrites, boys and girls, because our dear, sweet Forbes has gotten a hold of some wonderful numbers out of the latest Disney Plus series. Yes, Disney Star Wars, The Acolyte. And it looks like it's not so equal behind the scenes when it comes to the pay scales being responsible for the Disney's Acolyte. And considering the fact that they spent at minimum $180 million on this show, don't you think they could have at least paid their women what they properly deserved, as much and or equal to men, or if not more? Why would a company that promotes equity and equality and pushes women and minorities into all of their storytelling, even at the sacrifice of good storytelling, just to check a box on a list that they have? Well, I don't think there's any other way to call it out than other sheer hypocrisy, boys and girls, because that's what they are. They're hypocrites. And this is just the latest example of why the Walt Disney Company deserves to be shamed, boys and girls, because around this channel, we'd like to make shame great again. And the Walt Disney Company is one of the ones that deserves it the absolute most in our modern era, in our current pop culture. And that's exactly what we're going to do here today. Because as you can see from this Forbes headline, Disney forced to reveal unequal pay on the Star Wars show, The Acolyte. Color us shocked there. The Walt Disney Company is nothing more than a bunch of virtue signaling hypocrites. So we're going to check out the juicy details of this article, get into exactly what the numbers are, not only maybe some of my own personal reasons as to why they could actually exist, but of course, once again, when a company like the House of Mouse that touts equality and all of the rest of this kind of nonsense, agenda-driven BS pushed forward all the time, well, I think we need to call them out on hypocrisy. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button, share it with all your friends, and subscribe and or follow if you have not already, depending on what platform you're on. And whether you're watching live or you're watching this later on the little video that's been cut out, make sure you leave us a comment down below and let us know exactly what you think about this. And if the hypocrisy of Disney surprises you at all, or maybe this is your first time finding that out, and that's totally okay. We welcome all with a seat at the table who's willing to tell the truth and be reasonable about things. So by Caroline Reed, and she covers entertainment industry focusing on movies and theme parks. How excellent for her. So despite having women up front and center on the screen, The Acolyte is not so diverse behind the scenes. Documents filed by Disney have revealed that this is the latest Star Wars spinoff series. The Acolyte isn't a force for equality, despite famously featuring a female-centric cast. According to the filings in early April last year, when production of the streaming series was still in full swing, just 30% of the 695 employees are women. Wow, wait a minute. According to Disney and all of its propaganda, women are just as good as men and can do all of the same jobs just as good, if not better. Well, then why isn't your workforce at least 50% female? I mean, 70 or 80%. If you don't need men in the front and center, good, strong men in the front and center of your storytelling, well, why do you need them behind the scenes? And now, given it is Disney, so the idea of good, strong men, but at the end of the day, there's still a lot of good people that work in Hollywood, especially a lot of the guys that are like the carpenters and people that build the sets and people, do all the heavy lifting. They carry on the cables and the camera crew and stuff like that. And guess what? They're heavy labor intensive jobs that at the end of the day, most women don't want to do. But Disney, you were just recently exposed saying how you have no problem not hiring the most qualified person in the job, but you'll do it strictly based on their skin tone and what they have dangling between their legs. Well, why? That's good for all of your executive classes. That's good for all your VPs and your hirings and all those cushy office jobs. Why isn't it good enough for all of your behind the scenes crew? Methinks you don't believe your own stink. And it gets worse than that. Not only are just 30% of the women, less than half of the almost 700 employees are women, the women's there we go. Women's average hourly pay was 19.4% lower than men's. Yes, boys and girls, even the House of Mouse itself, the one out there pushing all of the equality and all of the equity, and we can just gender swap and race swap characters, and it doesn't matter because men are women and women are men, and there's no difference whatsoever. Well, it turns out when it comes down to the bookkeeping and it comes down to actually paying people, the Walt Disney Company does things just like everybody else. Now, why would there? Why would the women get paid on average? Now, man, this is average, 20% less than men. Well, it's pretty simple. Depends on the job the woman wants to do, right? A lot of jobs on a film set don't pay as much as others. I know, strange concept. Obviously a job that requires heavy lifting or maybe operating a camera and picking it up and swinging it around is going to pay more than the person who gets the coffee and the cookies, right? Now, both of those people need to be there. People got to eat, and somebody's got to load around that big 150-pound camera. You know what I mean? Somebody's going to be able to set that up. Now, what do you think? Which job do you think would pay more? Now, if you're a woman or if you're a man, which job would you more likely prefer? Because at the end of the day, no matter how much they want to argue, no matter how many doors and opportunities they want to open up, you can't stop human nature. You can't stop the way God designed us. Women generally, and I say this as a caveat every time I bring this up because there's always somebody out there in the comments be like, well, I know. There are always exceptions to every rule, but the rules exist for a reason. On a general standpoint, most women lean towards more caregiving and nurturing jobs. What's more caregiving than taking care of food for people and making sure everybody's fed? Men generally lean towards more labor-intensive kind of jobs. Now, am I probably preaching to the choir for most of you on this? Absolutely. But for maybe somebody that's new, who maybe hasn't ever seen something like this before, who is maybe finally just fed up with all of the Disney hypocrisy and is finally having their eyes opened. I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's how men and women generally lean towards things. So, yeah, there's absolute justification for this. An action-heavy show with a lot of stunts and a lot of special effects and a lot of stunt men is generally going to have more kind of, now you do a romance, you do a love comedy, who knows? Who knows how you can go with it then? But as of right now, the way things sit with something like this is the breakdown I expect. But it's not the breakdown that Disney touts all of the times. It's weird how you totally want equality when it comes to the nice, cushy office jobs in air conditioning where all you're doing is pushing papers and getting lattes for yourself versus you don't want the equality behind the scenes working the blue collar work in Hollywood. It's weird how they're never fighting for equality down at your local sewage treatment plant. It's weird how they're never fighting for equality on a construction job site. Weird how that is, huh? Weird. So set around 100 years before the events of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the Acolyte sees a former Jedi apprentice reuniting with her master to investigate a series of crimes. Hunger Games, Amanda Stellenberg is a dual roles as ex-student Osha and her evil twin May, which Amanda Steinberg, that woman only has like one facial expression. She was a cute kid in the Hunger Games, and right now she's just an expressionless role. Like she literally has one expression throughout the entire show. It's just bad. It's just bad. And of course, the wife of the Acolyte, of course, Rebecca Henderson, wife of the Acolyte show, Leslie Headland, of course, plays in the show as well. Because, of course, if it wasn't just for the hypocrisy of not paying your women equal, for not having 50% equal representation in the background of your Acolyte series, even though you pushed time and time again, saying you want 50% representation from minorities, POCs, and underprivileged or whatever kind of nonsense BS terms you come up with for their groups. Funny how Disney doesn't do that behind the scenes of their own productions. Almost like they're hypocrites, but who knows? And then, of course, let's not even mention Leslie Headland and, of course, the former assistant to Harvey Weinstein. So Black and international actors for the show's ranks need to be dubbed as the most inclusive and diverse live-action Star Wars project ever. It has also led to the show being negatively branded as woke, which some critics believe is the driving force behind the plummeting ratings on a review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes. Just a day after the show launched on June 4th, its audience score stood at 50%. Since then, there has been disturbance in the force because, yes, last we checked, it's like a 13 or a 13%. The fans have rejected this nonsense, and it has nothing to do with what the BS excuses that they come up with have seen. What has it been? Time and time again. It's because the story is bad. There's inconsistencies. The dialogue is garbage. A lot of the actors can't act very well. A lot of it feels like it was ripped off straight out of stuff out of the Matrix. It's absolutely insane. And so here we go. This is from Rolling Stone. Okay, this isn't from a bunch of us on the internet that they accuse of us being sexist and racist and all this stuff. This is from Rolling Stone. Most of the pieces are uneven at best, if not simply underwhelming. USA Today said it's full of logical fallacies, hokey dialogue, and nonsensical plots. And honestly, if you're willing to go out there and actually look and listen to any of the legitimate criticism that comes from like the Fellowship or from any more of the independent media people out there that are covering all of this kind of stuff, they were going to say the exact same things. It's wild to see Hollywood reporting finally wake up to this nonsense and actually call it out. Because at this point, they can't even just cover it up anymore. They can't lie about the fact that this stuff is absolute nonsense. Yes, you can go to the Rotten Tomatoes score and say it's got like an 89% and go, well, the majority of the legacy media approves of it. No, they don't. Go through those scores, okay? First off, look at the top critic score to begin with. That is going to be drastically lower than the all critics. I think last time I checked, it was like at 70% or something like that, right? So do that. Just do that for a favor. That's always the best way to do it. And then you want to go through all the critics, go through all the critics. Look at how many names you actually recognize on that list of people who are giving a favorable critics review. The majority of them have nothing more than a blog or an itty bitty little YouTube channel like me, but for some reason, because of Rotten Tomatoes inclusivity rules, is now lauded as an official critic on their Rotten Tomatoes score system over there. What are those? Well, boys and girls, we know who those people are. Those are the shills. Those are, yes, legacy media is also access media, but also shill media is access media because the majority of those shills only keep shilling for these companies because they have access and they don't want to lose their access. Because as soon as you step out of line and say even one bad thing about this company or any of these Hollywood companies out there, most of the time you lose your access. Ask Clownfish TV how their relationship with Disney went. So this is something that we've seen time and time again. So guess what? The fans aren't watching it. The audience scores are abysmal when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and everywhere else you go. Now, not only does this prove that the Disney Star Wars is nothing more than a bunch of hypocrites who do not even go out there and do the things that they try to push and force you to do on everybody else. Boy, it's almost like that old saying of Do as I tell you, not as I do. It's so weird. It's almost like they can't actually live up to their own standards, their own expectations that they want to force on everyone else. So Disney, Star Wars, be shamed for your hypocrisy, because that's exactly what you are. A bunch of hypocrites who have lacked any kind of storytelling or creative ability whatsoever. And that's why you continue to fail. That's why even the legacy media shills out there can no longer continue to cover for your absolute hot dumpster fire of a garbage that you try to label as Star Wars. You have failed with the fans. You have failed with the legacy media now, and you will continue to fail and cost your company billions of dollars. You spent $180 million on a show that has barely even charted except for once on any of the rating systems that actually mattered. The Acolyte is a failure. You did it to yourselves, Bob Iger, Leslie Headland, and Kathleen Kennedy. And yes, you too, Dave Filoni. Every one of you deserves to be shamed. And now we get to shame you for being nothing more than the hypocrites we always knew you to be. It's weird how the other side always accuses you of doing the exact same thing they've been doing all along.